Hi, everybody. I'm Danielle Paige, and I'm here for the Barnes& and Noble Gilded Marissa Meyer event. We are so excited to be introducing this book. I just finished it this afternoon, and I just loved it so much. Quickly, before you get to talk, Marissa is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the Renegades trilogy, the Lunar Chronicles series, the Wires and the Nerve graphic novels, and the Lunar Chronicles coloring. Her first standalone novel, Heartless, was also a #1 New York Times bestseller. Marissa created and hosts a podcast called The Happy Writer. She lives in Tacoma, Washington with her husband and their 2 daughters. And Instant Karma, also the adult book that you wrote, came out last year too. So great. So hi, Marissa.
Danielle, thank you for joining me. I know some people are maybe expecting Roshni Chakshi, who was my original guest, and she couldn't make it, unfortunately, but I love you, Danielle, and I'm so excited and so delighted that you agreed to join me in her place. So thank you for being here.
I am so excited to be here, and I love Roshni. She's so amazing. And I love your sparkly top.
Thank you. Thank you. I felt really fancy picking it out.
Is it a top or a dress?
I'm sorry?
Is it a dress or a top?
It is a dress. Yes.
Oh, it's very
I know. Fancy. It's a rental, by the way.
Really? Are you doing like Rent the Runway or one of those?
Yes, I love Rent the Runway.
I've never done that. Do you love doing it?
I love it. I do. Yeah. You can be super fancy. And then when you're done being fancy, you just ship it back.
Well, it looks beautiful. So
thank you. It's my gilded. Got to be gilded for this
you
tour.
Are totally gilded. By the way, I love the book. It's so fabulous. I want to just start by asking you, you've done so many fairy tales. Why was this your next one?
Oh, good question. So originally when I finished up Instant Karma and was thinking, okay, what am I going to do next? I actually started writing a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And I got maybe maybe 30,000 or so words into it and just kept hitting a wall with that story and just couldn't figure out where to go with it. Usually I'm an outliner, and I had outlined up to this point and I just couldn't figure it out. And I spent a couple of months just kind of banging my head against the wall. And then this new story appeared like a gift from the universe one day. And it was this idea for a Rumpelstiltskin retelling instead. And I say that it just like kind of appeared, but in hindsight, I actually think that the idea to redo Rumpelstiltskin is one that had kind of been in my imagination and in my subconscious, maybe since I was a little kid. Like, this was one of my favorite fairy tales when I was growing up. But it was also one of those stories that really drove me bonkers because I loved the creepiness. I loved how bizarre the story was, but I also felt like it had so many unanswered questions. You know, there's this girl, this king that threatens to kill her if she can't do this impossible thing. And then this little elven guy shows up and does it for her. And eventually she ends up like bargaining away her firstborn child for this gift. But we don't know, like, why does Rumpelstiltskin want the firstborn child? And does the king ever figure out that she can't actually spin straw into gold? And like, do they have a happy marriage? Because the king kind of seems like a jerk. And there's just like a lot of things that I was very unsatisfied with in the story of Rumpelstiltskin. So it's one that was just kind of always in the background. And then it just kind of popped to the surface when I desperately needed it to.
Well, I think you really did such a beautiful job, and I'm assuming there's a sequel because I just finished it this afternoon, and it seems like there's more, right?
There is more. There's definitely more. It is a duology. Yes. So book 2 will be out next November. So yeah, for people who haven't read it yet, it does end in kind of a mean place, kind of true to Marissa Meyer form.
I do love your cliffhangers.
Thank you. I love a good cliffhanger, not so much as a reader. I know they can be really frustrating as readers, but it's also kind of what pulls you along in this story. It makes you excited for the next book, at least for me.
Me too. I started out in soaps, and that's always been, I'm a big fan of the cliffhanger.
Queen of the cliffhanger.
Yeah. So what was your first fairy tale that you fell for? Like, what was your fairy tale that popped your cherry, like just made you like, this is your thing?
Gosh, you know, I mean, I grew up on Disney, like so many of us. And the first Disney movie that I really fell in love with was The Little Mermaid. And it's funny because I love Disney's The Little Mermaid. And then when I was, 5, 6 years old, my grandma gave me a book of fairy tales that included The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. And I distinctly remember reading that story and just being like heartbroken. Like, this is not the story that I was told. And I was like so angry that it ended the way that it did. So like on one hand, I can't say that I love the Hans Christian Andersen story, but at the same time, I feel like that was the story that started to make me really curious to know more about fairy tales and more about like what are the other versions. Like, Disney is leaving some really important details out that I want to know about.
Some very, very dark details. I think I'm thinking with my work too. I would say you made Rumpelstiltskin, I don't know if this is too much of a spoiler, kind of he's a love interest in this story.
He is the love interest. Yeah, I think.
How did you decide that that's where what his role was going to be?
Yeah, I knew, I think pretty much from right away, because I always knew that the king was going to be the villain. I just felt like from the original story, she gets married to this king and you're kind of led to believe that, happily ever after, but he had threatened to kill her multiple times, for like really dumb reasons. And clearly he's greedy, like he just wants her for the gold. And so, like, not that you couldn't write a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, and make the king a good guy and do that justice, but I knew that I wanted to go a different direction with it. And from there, the next question, of course, is, well, then who's my love interest? Because I got to have romance. Right. I can't not have romance. And so it just felt like a really natural fit to then make Rumpelstiltskin the love interest character. And so then figuring out all of that and how it was going to work with the kind of bargaining that they have to do, and like how do you build a romantic relationship and build the tension and all of that, it was kind of a fun puzzle to figure out.
And I love is it Zerlina? How do you say it?
Zerilda.
I've been saying it wrong all day. So how did you come up with her angle that she's a storyteller and that she has to lie? Like, where did that come from? Did that come from another tale, or is it this pure you? Like, how did you decide that this would be her affliction?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was one of those things that kind of developed over multiple drafts of the story. I knew. So in the original fairy tale, we have the miller, the girl's father, is the one that tells the original lie. Like, my daughter can spin straw into gold. Right. And that kind of sets off, this whole chain that kind of ruins this girl's life. But I didn't want to do that. Like, I wanted her to have more agency, more independence, to be at fault for her own destiny, yes, good or bad. And so I knew that she would be the one that tells this lie. I can spin straw into gold. But from there, like, I don't know, it just kind of started to develop. Well, why does she tell this lie? How does she tell this lie? Why does anyone believe her? And it just kind of becomes an exploratory, like, lots of questions, lots of what ifs, lots of brainstorming. And at some point, and I couldn't tell you when, but at some point it started to generate into this idea that she had actually been cursed by the god of lies. And in being cursed, now we have this character who like almost can't help herself from telling these tall tales. And that's kind of, in some manners, turned her into an outcast. She lives in this really small, superstitious village. But on the other hand, she's also a really good storyteller. And so like all of the kids just adore her. Like she tells the best fairy tales. And so it was just one of those things that just kind of built on itself as I was writing and as I was getting to know her.
And what about your bad guy? How do you say it? It's
The Earl
King. Earl
King.
King.
Yes, dangerous and villainous, but oh so attractive. The Earl King, he obviously we've got the inspiration from the fairy tale, the villain,
Yes.
in my opinion, the king being the villain. But the Earl King is actually a figure from Germanic folklore. And so a lot of things in this story and in the world that I was trying to develop, I took directly from Germanic folklore and Norse folklore and some pagan folklore, and just kind of like let it all meld together into this world. And at one point I came across like a little bit, you know, when I was falling down some black hole on Wikipedia, which happened a lot with this book, and stumbled across this page about the Earl King. And I'd never heard of him, but he's this figure that kind of like wanders through the woods and kidnaps lost children and I don't know, like eats their hearts or does some awful thing. And it's like a warning, like kids don't wander off into the woods because the Earl King will get you. And also sometimes he's also said to be the leader of the Wild Hunt, which I loved that. And I knew that I wanted to incorporate that somehow. So yeah, so you just kind of start thinking, well, okay, we've got the Earl King. We know he's wicked. We know he's villainous and dark and creepy, but wouldn't it be fun if he was also like really smoldering and sexy? And so why not?
And was there any version of this where you felt like she might fall for him?
No, not really. I
always
always knew
a pure baddie in this case.
Pure baddie. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm hoping that readers might like him in some way. But he's a true villain. Like he does really terrible things. And so even if there are times when you think like, oh, but he's so charming, I hope that most readers will be like, bad news. Yeah.
I agree, but he is cute though.
Very attractive.
And everybody, if you guys are listening in, you can submit your questions in the Q&A, and I will get to them when we have like 20 minutes left.
Danielle, I want to pause because I want to know, you asked about what fairy tale got me into the love of fairy tales. You also have done retellings. Like what for you was that first entry fairy tale?
I have to say Sleeping Beauty. I loved Maleficent. I thought like like the idea of this witch turning into a dragon just kind of got me. And then I would also say Wizard of Oz is like an American fairy tale. So
of course,
so I was obsessed with both of those.
Yeah, from like a really young age.
Yeah, I think I saw both when I was like 6, and I wanted, like, I watched the movie every time it came on, both of them, and that was totally like my obsession. Yeah. And I think that our stories definitely come from that idea of like the missing bits from like when you see something as a child and you're wondering like, well, why is that, or what else is going on in that story? Yeah. And I think that it's been so much fun to get to write those stories.
Yeah, no, and the what if questions, they just pop up sometimes and you're like, ooh, that would make a good story.
Yes. Do you have other fairy tales that are like that are still calling to you? I know you mentioned Beauty and the Beast, but
so many. Yeah, will I ever go back to the Beauty and the Beast one? I don't know. That's a big question mark right now because I still haven't figured it out. We'll see. But no, I do. I have many, many other fairy tales that I would like to get to at some point. And I have some ideas that would not be a continuation of GILDED's story. Like it will definitely be wrapped up at the end of this 2-book series. But I have ideas for other stories that would be set in the same world. So kind of like companion or spin-off stories.
Right.
So
would they ever meld back together like the Lunar Chronicles? Like if you create something else in the same universe, would you?
Maybe? I don't know. I mean, I love it when authors do that where like the stories are separate and can be read separately, but like where maybe one character makes a cameo over here, or like you hit and reference back to things. And I think that's really fun as a writer, because like you've put so much work into developing these worlds and these characters.
Yes.
Like you want to get as much bang for your buck. But it's also fun for the readers. It's like little Easter eggs.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the idea of you kind of having your own universe so that you
Yeah.
have created and all those things are fitting together. And I think that you've done such a beautiful, Lunar Chronicles is one of my absolute favorite things in the entire world. I could not have written Dorothy if I hadn't read your book, because if Cinderella could go to space, I felt that Dorothy could, I could do this to Dorothy. So.
You have permission.
Yes, you gave me permission.
Yeah, yes, called you up. I said, Danielle,
yeah.
write the Dorothy story.
Yeah. So you did my very first event actually for Dorothy the day before the book came out with the Author's Guild. It did feel like I got like the fairy tale blessing from you. So thank you for that.
That's so funny. How many years ago was that now?
I got it. It had to be like 6-7 years ago.
That's amazing. Amazing. Yeah.
So I think you blessed the book. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. Anytime.
About the writing process for you. I know that you've done Nano before. Did you do this on Nano? Like, how did you, since you said it was you put Beauty and the Beast aside and then you started this. So how quickly did you write this?
Yeah, this was not a Nano book. Oh gosh, I probably wrote it over. It was actually kind of a long process because this was my COVID book. And so maybe 8 or 9 months. And it was, honestly kind of a difficult 8 or 9 months for COVID, but also dealing with a lot of stuff that was happening in our family at the time. And so it was a difficult book to get into sometimes, but there were also those times, and I think a lot of us have experienced this past year, where you just need to escape into some other world. And this world was very different for me to be writing in. It's dark, it's creepy, but there's also just a lot of really fun magical elements to it that I just loved. And so even though it was kind of difficult to do the mechanics of writing every day, once I was there, it really felt like the book that I needed at that time.
Good. Well, I think it shows on the page, and I think it's so much fun. And I like that you went in this kind of darker direction at the end. I wasn't expecting it to go that dark. Was that always your intention? I love dark, so I'm happy.
Thank you. I know you love dark.
Where did you always have that in mind as your ending?
Yes and no. So the big, and obviously we're going to avoid spoilers here. The big thing that happens at the end, yes, like I knew where we were going to cut off the story and what was going to be the catalyst then launching us into book 2. But there are some things that happen at the end that I wasn't expecting, and kind of one of those things where you're riding along and then something happens and you're just like, oh, come on, really? That horrible thing? And it kind of caught me off guard. But at the same time, it felt really natural for where the story was and what I knew about the Earl King in particular and what he would do in this situation. So it definitely veered dark, but it felt like, it'd kind of been building up to it.
And did you plot this out first this time, or did you pants it in some ways?
I did plot it out, which kind of, for most of my books, I plot. The rare exceptions when I have not plotted have always ended in disaster. Beauty and the Beast.
Yes, I've tried myself. I just can't do it. I can do like the first few chapters, like I can write free, and then I have to have an outline, or it's just like I'm wandering around.
Yeah, no, it really stresses me out. I found to not have a plan, even though the plan changes constantly. I at least have to feel like, there's a direction. I might veer off course from time to time, but I have a general idea of where we're headed. And so, yeah, I knew a lot of where this book was going to head and kind of a lot of the big important moments that it was going to have to hit. And of course, one of the great things about writing fairy tale retellings is that you can kind of structure it off of that.
Yes.
And so I knew I had the big major moments from the fairy tale that I was going to be working with also. Much more complicated in book 2, when the fairy tale gives us zero information for like 9 whole months out of this poor girl's life. So that's been a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, I had that with like the snow when I did the Snow Queen. There's nothing in there. You're just making
Yeah,
it all
you
up.
have to like use your imagination now. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Wizard of Oz was very easy. There's so much stuff there. And so when is the sequel going to come out?
It will be out next November. I don't know if we have like a exact date, but a year from now.
And
I'm hard at work.
Can you give us like, without spoiling, is there anything you can tell us about the next one?
Oh, what can I tell you about the next one? Well, we will. Gosh, no, I can't. Spoils. It all spoils too much.
Okay, I'm not going to spoil. I'm not going to spoil.
Yeah, yeah. I will tell people, for people who have read Gilded, it talks about a place called Gravenstone, and we will get to go there, is one thing that I'm really excited about.
Can you talk a little bit more about the world building? Because this is very different than your other books. Like, how did you like look at things from German fairy tales in terms of the world building, or did you actually like look at present day things and take from there? Like, how did you build your world?
Yeah, no, it was a lot of research. I kind of hinged it off of 16th century Germany. So that gave me a lot to work with as far as like the architecture and the technology and, what sort of, how do we travel? How do we get around? What are people wearing? What food are they eating? So you can kind of work with a lot there. But then when it came to the magic systems and like the pantheon, there's a pantheon of gods that plays a big part, and that sort of thing. A lot of it was drawn from those different folklores that I mentioned, and just doing tons of research into like pagan gods and traditions and holidays and rituals and lots of monsters and beasts, mythological beasts. And honestly, it was one of those things where I ended up with like this list of so many magical creatures that I just was fascinated by, and having to like pick and choose, like there's not enough space for all of them. I really wanted to just make it feel like all of these creatures could just come off the page at any moment.
And I think you do such a great job with that. I remember attending a panel, I think you and Lee Bardugo did, and you were talking about knowing everything down to like the actual coins in your world. Do you do that? Did you do that with this book?
Yes and no. Like there's some things that I feel like I know really well, and I have a really super clear idea of some parts of the world. And then some things like they just weren't important. Like I remember at one point, is like in this, like assume she lives in a country. Is there a king? Is there a queen? Like it was so just like not important to the story at that point.
Right.
And so, but then I was like, well, but like she would know, the character would know, and therefore I should know. And so I did have to like pause and figure it out. But yeah, so there's like things that normally I would spend a lot of time thinking about just didn't seem necessary. And then other things,
it's actually a more intimate story in the sense that we really see these two characters who are prisoners in this world, and everything is kind of insulated. So it was like a kind of a smaller world, which was lovely, actually.
Yeah. And then of course getting to know this actual castle. A lot of the story takes place in this haunted castle where she's kind of trapped for a long time. And so really figuring out like the mechanics of that, the ghosts, and how they act on one side of the veil versus how they act on the full moon, and it all figuring that part, I think, was probably one of the bigger challenges of the world building, just kind of really wrapping my mind around how it all worked.
I loved the ghost thing. I think it was such a nice, like a clever thing. And the idea that he doesn't know what he is without spoiling anything. I'm going to not say this. But that just came to you?
The ghost thing actually came because I was researching the story of Rumpelstiltskin and trying to just like reading, of course, most of us know the Grimm version, but there's a bunch of other versions out there. So I was just like reading up on it and came across some article that was talking about like the actual name, Rumpelstiltskin. what does it mean? Does it mean anything? And there's lots of different theories. But one of the theories was that it could be loosely translated to mean little rattle ghost, which would have been like a name for a poltergeist. Wow. And as soon as I read that, I was like, I love that. I am making him a poltergeist.
Yes, I love that. It was like such a nice like surprise when I got to it. So. So are you going to do, I mean, I know with Lunar Chronicles, you also did a graphic novel, or do you have any plans of like any other iterations of this book?
I don't. Never say never, but I feel like right now I'm just like so focused on writing book 2 that yes. I couldn't even think of anything more for it. But I love doing the graphic novels, and I do actually have another graphic novel totally separate from this, but another graphic novel in the works. So hopefully I'll get to talk about that at some time.
Cool. Is there
How about you? I loved your graphic novel. Are you going to be doing more of them?
Yeah, I have another one in the works. I can't announce yet, but I'm excited about. And yeah,
that's awesome.
It was really such a fun thing to get to do this other medium. How was it for you? Like, was it just you have such great dialogue anyway? Was it like freeing not to do as much world building, or did you feel like?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of those things where you can really rely on your illustrator so much to get across so many details. And for both the Lunar Chronicles and this new graphic novel that I'm working on, like I want the illustrator to feel like they have some say in what yes. the world is and what the characters are and what it looks like. And so for me, writing the scripts for them, I feel like I'm maybe a little bit more sparse than a lot of graphic novel authors. I don't go into a lot of detail for the illustrations. Like I keep it very, basic. You have to show this person, they're smiling or whatever. But I really try to let the illustrator have a lot of creative input.
Yeah, I love that. I love having an artist, like they bring this whole other level to the work. And yeah.
And I feel like they know their job so much better than I do. Like I'm not an illustrator. So if they have a great idea for a way to showcase this scene, take it. It's all yours.
Yes. And then it's just this great product that's between the two of you. I can't wait to see your new one.
Thank you. I can't wait to see yours too. I can't wait to hear more about it.
Yeah, I will tell you offline.
Okay. Sounds good.
Let's see what else. Another question is about the storytelling again. So your main character, she has this gift of storytelling, but so did Cress had kind of the gift of computer hacking and in Heartless you had the cooking. Like, do you have a special affinity for the storyteller, or do you feel like you love all of your babies equally?
I feel like I pretty much love them all. There's one thing, it's funny because I know a lot of people will be asking if I relate to Serilda being the storyteller. And of course I do in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I feel like I really envy her because she like has this gift where she can just start spinning a story and just start speaking, and this fabulous, whimsical story comes out of her. Of course, in reality, like those chapters where she's telling that story, I agonized over for months.
But the stories within the story were great. I love them.
Thank you.
And they had a different, like, kind of a fairy tale feel. I thought it was really great. But you did give her the line where somewhere it's like sometimes the stories you have to wait for the stories to reveal themselves. Mm-hmm. So I do think that was kind of a nice like nod to the writer and how hard it actually is. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that was like me inserting like an FYI. It's not always this easy. She makes it look so easy.
Yes. Well, I'm going to switch over and look at some of the questions that the audience has been asking. So hold on one second. Okay. Someone's asking.
Before we do that, because I don't want to run out of time at the end, just like on my own personal curiosity.
Yes.
When is the next Ravens book coming out? Because I'm so excited for it.
It's coming out in January. I think it's January 11th.
Okay.
It is the Monarchs, which I'm going to send you a copy.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. No, because I just finished. This was my Halloween read, and I'm like so ready for book 2. So I'm glad that it's coming out so soon. Awesome.
Yes, I was hoping that we were going to have the October release, but I think with all the supply chain stuff, it ended up coming out in January. So I'm just glad it'll be out.
I know.
And that's me and Cass Morgan. So we loved getting to write together. So anyway, and everybody at home, if you are waiting for your copy of Gilded, it's going to be, I think, 8 to 10 days in the mail. So just so hold tight, you will be receiving it.
I went and signed them. All 300 of them. So I know they're signed and they'll be shipping them out shortly.
That's awesome. Okay, so first question. Any chance you're going to revisit the Cinder World, maybe in TV form?
Oh gosh. Well, as you know, Danielle, we are not always in control of that.
You're not.
Yes, I would love to see the Lunar Chronicles out in TV show, movies, something that would make me really, really happy. It is not up to me, unfortunately. I can tell you that right now it has sold once again. I think this is the 4th studio that has now held the rights to it. And they seem very enthusiastic. So I have my fingers crossed. I hope.
I'll also cross my fingers. I want to see it.
Me too.
Okay, next question. Do you have any advice for teens starting out with writing?
Oh, lots of great advice. Where does one even begin? One thing that I would go back and tell my teen self who desperately wanted to be a published writer is to be patient and to be kind to yourself. For me, like the dream of being published, it was like all consuming, and I would set these really lofty goals for myself. Like I'm gonna, write this book in the next 3 months, and I'm gonna send it off to editors by Christmas, and I'm gonna be published by the time I'm a junior in high school. And like, I would set these goals, not realizing that it's a process and it takes time, and everything that I was writing like was just a step forward in that journey. And everything that I was writing was me learning how to tell a story and how to write good characters and how to build plots and develop suspense and all of these things. And so everything that I wrote was necessary and important to eventually get me to publication. But at the time, I was just so focused on these goals that I was like totally stressing myself out, and I would be really hard on myself whenever I didn't hit these goals that I'd set. And so I think it's really important to, like, yes, have the goal, have the dream of being published. That's awesome. But also try to be patient and like enjoy the journey, enjoy the crafting process, and know that you will get there in time. But don't be so focused on publication that you forget to enjoy all the great stuff that you're working on right now.
I think that is excellent advice.
Danielle, I'm going to throw that one back to you. What is your advice for teen authors?
I think I would piggyback off of yours a little bit. I think it's the idea that you're not one piece of work. You're not one book. You're not one script. There's always like, I think that a lot of people get stuck on that first manuscript and they end up working on it forever, which could be the one. But also there could be value, and the next manuscript might be the one. Like, I think that I'm not saying don't finish your book, definitely finish your book, but don't let all of your hopes ride on one work, because your career is long. If a book doesn't work or doesn't sell, your next one could and probably will. There's always a place for what you're doing. It's just, it doesn't have to be that one.
Yeah. No, that's great advice.
And just to keep going. I mean, it's so hard.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also find joy. Like, and this is a big thing that we talk about a lot on my podcast is, can be a lot of challenges and struggles with the writing career, but ultimately, what are we doing? We're coming up with stories. We're making stuff up. We're going on adventures. Like, there's a lot of fun involved. And so I just personally try really hard to stay focused on that. And I think that if you can tap into that, then that's something that's going to carry you through, all of the struggles and the rejections and all of that.
And if you guys aren't listening to Marissa's podcast, it's so wonderful. It's so inspiring. And just hearing all these authors' journeys, I think it really reminds you that there's more than one way to get there. And,
yes.
and I do agree about finding the joy, because we're just really lucky to get to write for a living and get to do this thing. And I hope that you guys get to do it too.
Yeah, completely.
Okay. Next question. Last book you read?
The Ravens, actually.
And I literally finished this like 2 hours ago. So let's see. What is your favorite romance trope?
Oh gosh, I love romance tropes. Probably enemies to lovers.
Oh, I love that. I would agree with that.
Yeah. How about you? What's your favorite?
I'm going to agree with you on that one. I think that's my favorite.
Yeah. I'm also a big fan of the fake relationship.
Fake relationships are good.
Yeah. But I love a lot of romance tropes. I'm actually going to use that question to do some self-marketing, because this is my event. I guess I'm allowed to do that. If you haven't heard, I am editing an anthology of romantic short stories, in which myself and 9 other authors have each taken a beloved romance trope and written a short story around it.
I'm so jealous you did not invite me.
I'm sorry. I cannot tell you how hard it was trying to choose 9 authors. It was like the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life.
No, I cannot wait to read it. It sounds amazing.
I'm very, very excited. It's called Serendipity, and it is coming out in January.
And can you say who the other authors are?
Yeah, I don't have like the full list right in front of me, but we've got Julie Murphy, Abigail Heen-Wen, Elizabeth Eulberg, Caleb Rarig, Leah Johnson, who else? Elise Bryant. How many have I counted? Sarah Winifred Searle. And I have Anna Marie.
You're
McNamara.
very close to the 9, I think.
I know. I'm gonna remember like that last one. Be like, oh, I forgot that one.
Well, you guys can look it up and find out who else is involved. But it sounds great.
It is. I loved editing it, so I can't wait for people to get it.
And what was it like? Was this the first time editing something?
It was, and it's one of those things that's kind of been that I've wanted to do for a long time. And so then I finally pitched it to my publisher, and I was just so delighted that they said yes.
Well, it sounds amazing. Let's see. Are there any fairy tales you think that are retold too much?
No, I mean, I think Cinderella is probably the most retold fairy tale in history. So I would be somewhat hypocritical if I said that there was. No, honestly, I think that's the wonderful thing about fairy tales, is that you can take this story that is so well known and has been around for so long and still find new ways to look at it, to spin it, see it through a new lens, give it a cool twist. That's one of the great things about doing retellings.
I would agree, absolutely. And there's like something inherent in each tale, I think, that is begging to be retold. There has to be like some core of the story that we still care about. So I think that's why we keep redoing it.
Yeah. And also as writers, like if you give 100 writers, the same prompt or the same fairy tale or whatever, you're going to get 100 totally different stories. Like everyone's bringing their own voice to that.
I would agree with that. You're getting asked about Once Upon a Time, the TV show. Did you see it and see Rumple? Was that any influence on you?
I did. I watched the first, I don't know how many seasons I watched. I stopped watching at some point. It was like right before Captain Hook came in. I want to say that was maybe like season 3, because I remember everyone telling me like, no, Captain Hook is really sexy. You need to go watch it. But yes, I did watch it for the first couple of seasons at least. And I loved the Rumpelstiltskin character. I pretty much felt like he was the best character in the show.
I always stop. I watched that show on and off, and then they would do a character that I was working on. It was like, okay, I can't watch. Now they're doing an Oz season. I can't watch it anymore. Or
Right.
Snow Queen season. And then I just stopped. So I've still not seen all of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you prefer the Hans Christian Andersen tales or the Grimm fairy tales?
For me, probably Grimm more. It's a tough one because there's some Hans Christian Andersen stories that I really love, and then there's some Grimm stories that I really love, and then they both have stories that I don't love so much. But generally speaking, to me, Hans Christian Andersen could be very didactic, and like everything had a moral, and I just kind of find that annoying sometimes.
Yeah, I think I'm more Team Grimm too. But I had a lot of the Hans Christian Andersen ones. I remember having a big book of those.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, another question about graphic novels. Is there something that was edited out that you edited out of the book that you like? Do you kill any babies in this one?
Out of Gilded? Yeah, it's funny. The original concept, and we're going like way back now to like that first day when I thought I'm going to do Rumpelstiltskin instead. And my first plan had been to actually have two different storylines. So one storyline was going to be like the miller's daughter, the story of Rumpelstiltskin. And then the second storyline was going to be like 16 years later when the child that is bargained away is now a teenager and grown up, and it was going to kind of follow the two subplots. And I did write quite a bit of the daughter's storyline before realizing like this book is going to be like 800,000 words long. I don't have enough space to be telling both stories right now. And so I ended up cutting that out. But there's definitely a part of me that would like to maybe go back and revisit it at some point.
And would you ever go back to Lunar Chronicles? Would you ever do you think there's another chapter there for you? We're talking about worlds that we missed, so you feel like you're done.
Yeah, I feel pretty done. That said, I am working on, and I'm gonna have to be like super vague here. We have the Cinder 10-year anniversary next year. And so I am working on a Cinder Lunar Chronicles related project that is, I think, going to come out next spring. And it's very silly and totally different from anything I've ever done. But it's, in my mind, it's very much like a heartfelt gift to the fans. So I really, really hope that people are going to like it.
Well, I'm sure I'm going to like it. I want an advanced copy of that if I can get that. Let's see. Will you ever continue the Renegade storyline?
Oh, now that I would say that has a much better chance of more continuation than Lunar Chronicles at this point. For people who've read Renegades, we know that it kind of ended with a twist question mark at the end. So I am not actively working on a follow-up, but I do have ideas for where I would take the story if/when I go back to it. So I would say somewhere between maybe and probably is where I am with that right now.
I think we'll take that. Maybe and probably is good. What is your favorite book that you've ever written?
Oh, I don't have one. I don't know. I think I probably had the most fun writing Instant Karma.
And what made you decide that you were ready to write a grown-up book that is a little bit more actually, realistic side?
Yeah, it's not an adult. It's still YA, but it is contemporary romance. And I just had the idea for it. I just had this idea about a girl that could cast instant karma on people, and just thought that would be really fun and like very vicarious living. Like, who doesn't want that power?
Right.
So yeah, the idea was there, and luckily my publisher let me run with it. And it was just like pure joy. I just had so much fun writing that book. And it was my first enemies to lovers too.
Oh, true. Yeah. And was it a different writing experience, writing in kind of the real world instead of a world that you
Yeah, so
created?
different. Easier in some ways and more difficult in others. Like very refreshing that you don't have to like come up with a whole magic system, come up with countries and like laws, and you just don't have to develop everything from scratch. But at the same time, I think that there's more pressure to get things right. Like if you are writing, like Instant Karma takes place in a fictional town, but it's in California. So it's like, well, I can't talk about sea creatures that aren't native to California. Like you need to make sure you're being really accurate with stuff.
How much, if any, if at all, does your love for Sailor Moon influence your writing?
Every
I
day.
noticed.
Every day. Yeah, I mean, it was, I think, really apparent in the Lunar Chronicles. And a lot of Sailor Moon fans, like you can see the influence there. And also in Renegades and the whole superhero thing and like secret identities. And I just love that. I don't know that it was as big of an influence in Gilded, but just in general, like I still love the enemies to lovers story, like we've now talked about a few times. I love female friendship stories. I love that the trope of the girl that seems like she shouldn't amount to anything, and yet she's the most powerful one. Like there's a lot of things that I got from Sailor Moon that still really speak to me, and that do kind of continue to influence the stories that I'm drawn to write. Are you a fan? Are you a Sailor Moon fan?
I'm too old. I just missed Sailor Moon. I've seen it since, but I think I just missed the boat. Like I should have, yeah, but it's adorable.
It is. No, it's super fun show.
And aren't they redoing it? I think Netflix or somebody is doing a new one or something. Maybe it's
gosh, I know they did a newer one. That was 4 or 5 years ago now. So I don't know if they're now doing another one. Wouldn't surprise me, honestly.
But maybe I will try. I will try again because I know how much it influenced you, and and you influenced me. So let's see. Do you know what fairy tale your next book is about? That you know it's going to be the sequel to this. But beyond that, do you have another plan for another fairy tale?
I have a few, and I probably shouldn't say which ones I'm thinking about, but I have a few that are calling to me, and so we're going to kind of see how they fit into the master plan. I will say that I am actively listening to what readers who really like Gilded and like this world. I would love to hear from them and hear what other stories that they might be interested in, because that could help me decide what direction to go next.
Oh, I think that is so great. I think that it would be great to hear from everybody. Like you should tag Marissa on her Instagram and tell her what you think, or just post here.
Are you working on any more fairy tales?
I'm doing a fairy godmother origin story. So I
love it.
So that's coming out in I think next November, and then the sequel the year after that. So
awesome.
That's my COVID book.
Yeah, we've all got one.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Have you ever considered writing a Sleeping Beauty retelling?
It was actually one of the stories that I considered for the Lunar Chronicles way back in the day. And obviously did not make the cut, but it was one that was kind of played with. And I remember thinking that that she would be locked in like a cryogenic freezing chamber or something was how I was going to do the sci-fi twist.
Well, that totally works if you ever wanted to go back, you have
I
another
actually
chapter.
think that it's been done. I think that there was a sci-fi Sleeping Beauty, and I never read it, but I remember hearing about it and thinking like, oh, that's kind of like what I was going to do.
And in terms of like movies and other books, like who influenced you when it came to writing? Like what's your touchstone?
Oh gosh, Sailor Moon is probably the biggest one, honestly. And Disney and Firefly and Star Wars, for kind of that sci-fi influence. Lord of the Rings was huge for me growing up. Yeah. Yeah. How about you? What are some of your big influences?
I was
Obviously
a big
Wizard of Oz. I know
Wizard of
that.
Oz, all of Disney. I was a big Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Let's see, I'm trying to think of, and then I like a lot of the space stuff, but that hasn't really come into my work. But I loved aliens and stuff like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are you
But
going to do
everyone's so
sci-fi?
annoying.
Do you think
I
sci-fi might be in your future?
I would love to try some sci-fi actually. I think that would be fun. I do think that like reading, like it's just having all the technical stuff though, that seems like that
Yeah.
would be harder.
Yeah. No, I know. I remember
I
doing
mean,
lots
how
of
did you research for that? Did you just
honestly, I spent a lot of time just digging through like Scientific American magazine and trying to just like write down some cool sciencey lingo and like tech lingo and like, okay, I can figure out a way to use this to make the world seem more authentic.
and would you ever think about like is there another genre that you haven't tried that you want to try?
Yeah. I mean, I love murder mysteries. I'm really intimidated by murder mysteries. I don't know that I have the brain for it. Like they're such puzzles.
I think you have the
And
brain for it. I mean, you well,
yeah,
I think that
I
you put
know.
together like the Lunar Chronicles is like such a big soap opera of things. Like if you can do that, you can do
I
it.
guess it's like, but for a murder mystery, like you really have to, the clues have to be there, but not obvious. And I feel like it's just, such a skill that some people have to kind of lead your reader down the wrong path and yet also be giving them all the information that they actually need. Like, I don't know, it's just, it boggles my mind just to think about it. But I do love the genre as a reader. So maybe someday.
Well, I think you could do it because I think you have a lot of twists, and I think that you accomplish that with the same muscle.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your encouragement.
I think let's see if there's any other questions. And let's see, enemies to lovers. How long does it take you to write? How long did it take you to write your very first book?
My very first book, so Cinder took me about 2 years from idea to sending off the query letter to my agent. These days, most books take me somewhere in the 6 to 12 month range. How about you?
Okay. I feel like I'm slowing down. I think Dorothy, I did 9 months, and I feel like the last one, it just with edits, I went back and forth all year, so almost a year for Fairy
Yeah.
Godmother. But then the Ravens was like 6 months, so I don't know. I think it
I was
depends.
wondering if we're having a co-writer, if it seemed to go a lot faster.
Well, it's like you have to stick to the outline because otherwise you're screwing your partner. So it really does go quickly, and you're only writing half a book, and then you have someone you can text and say like, hey, like
Yeah.
I don't think the scene's working, like what do you think? And so you had someone else to bounce it off of, so it was also, and you had someone waiting for your pages, so it keeps you really accountable. So I
Yeah.
highly recommend it.
Yeah. No, it sounds fun. I know I've never co-written, and a part of me feels like I would be a terrible co-writer because like the idea of giving up complete control just kind of weirds me out a little bit. But I know so many people who have done it and just talk about it like it's so much fun and such a great, like having that creative collaboration. They just like really enjoyed that.
I think you think of it as like a different type of project. Like I do, like I started in TV. So for me, like it's kind of like writing a script. It's like if you think of it as a separate thing, like this is your fun book. So it was my fun series where it's like I'm playing with a friend, and my expectations are different, I feel like, for that kind of project, and you just have fun with it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So we are hitting an hour, but I want to find a nice last question. Is there more kissing in this book or your other books? Is an actual question that's there, so I'm asking it. I think it's a fun way to end.
Yeah, there is kissing. I'll say that. Is there more kissing? You know, there's more kissing than in some of my other books. Yeah, not as much as in Winter. I think Winter gets the most kissing of everything that I've ever written, but that's because there's literally 4 couples in Winter. So, but there is definitely kissing.
And then let's see. Oh, there's a couple of more questions. Do you have any tips on query letters?
I do, but I'm actually going to there say that if you listen to the Happy Writer podcast, the tomorrow's episode, I'm actually talking to my agent, Jill Grinberg, and it's like an hour of talk about query letters. So people who are in that stage of writing, definitely listen to it because it's going to have way more great advice than I have time to give you now.
Okay. So let's end on something silly. Of all of your Swoony boys and all the books, who's your favorite?
Who's your favorite?
I'm right now I'm into Guild. I think he's very sweet.
But he's
I think
very
I'm always like that. Like it's like the thing that I'm reading is the thing that I'm most in love with, or the thing that I'm writing is the thing that I'm most yeah. But
I do that too. I do that too. I think it's hard because I love them all, but I would probably go with Jest from Heartless. I think he's always going to have a part of my heart.
Okay, well that I think is a good place to end. Thank everybody for coming, and please, if you haven't bought it already, go get your copy. I am absolutely in love with it, and I love you, Marissa. This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much again.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And thanks so much for coming, everyone.